All right, guys, welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I'm here to talk to you about Yan Xiaonan versus Mackenzie Dern, the full event recap, every fight. So let me start by begging you to like, share, and subscribe, all that horse shit. And there's something about a notification bell or whatever. Do that too. I don't know. All right. Mackenzie Dern versus Yan Xiaonan, razor thin fight. Very good main event. When you get a 5-round fight, that's practically a draw. A very good main event. But it wasn't a draw. Yan Xiaonan won the fight. Yan Xiaonan won 3 rounds. It's not my scorecard. Well, I did have her winning 3 rounds, but not 48-47. My scorecard, which is irrelevant, I thought it was a draw. And between the two, I would have thought Mackenzie got the better of Yan. I thought the, 47-46 was more reasonable than 48-47 Yan. So I scored it a draw, but I thought Dern got the better of Yan. Having said that, I don't think the decision was awful at all, because rounds 2 and 5 were both borderline 10-8s. And I hate when all these guys come out and they want to say, it was a 10-8. Look at that. He had this moment of that. There's no science to this shit. There's no science, and I always want there to be gray areas in MMA. How do you know who won the round? How do you know how to score the round? There should be a lot of gray area where one judge sees it 10-8, one judge sees it 10-9. And I'm not even one of these guys that insist that the judges explain themselves. Don't explain yourselves. We all saw what you saw, and there's a lot of different ways to score that fight. Oh, there's 3 different ways. 48-47, 47-47, 47-46. I don't blame a judge for scoring that fight, either one of those, which is what happened. But still, to the fight itself, despite Mackenzie Dern losing, I thought her stock, I don't want to say it rose or whatever, but it didn't drop in this fight. Mackenzie Dern walked away with her head held high. Yan Xiaonan is still one of the top fighters in the world, and everybody will remember this fight as a very close majority decision. Yan will step above Dern here. She'll get the title shot first, so to speak, but Mackenzie Dern, her record, while not immaculate, it's still worthy of her fighting at the top. And her skill set is certainly worthy of her fighting at the top. She can beat a lot of great fighters. I wonder how it would go if she fought Rose Namajunas. That's not some lock, in my opinion. I think Mackenzie Dern can compete with the best. But Mackenzie Dern, what's keeping her from greatness? Excuse me. Mackenzie Dern's a very good fighter, but what's keeping her from greatness is her wrestling. Her wrestling is lacking, which, coming into this fight, I said her wrestling is lacking, but I'm still picking her to win via submission because Mackenzie's really good at getting to the fight to the floor in one way or another. And that's what we saw in this fight, where Mackenzie was initially going for a takedown, level 1, step 1. That didn't work. Then she tried it against the cage. That didn't work. Then she tried an overhook, pulling her down, an underhook, grabbing a leg, whatever. She tried it all, wasn't able to get Yan to the ground. And eventually in round 2, she got her to the ground with a head and arm throw that I'm not sure if Mackenzie even meant it. Like, she wanted to get her down. I think she wanted both of them on the ground. So Mackenzie may have even baited Yan, where Yan ended up getting the better position, taking Mackenzie's back off of the takedown. And that was still all Mackenzie ever dreamed of, because from there it was, she worked some funky position. Even if I trained jiu-jitsu, I wouldn't know what it is, but I know it was like some half-stepping omoplata type of thing. And eventually she found a legitimate omoplata after untangling her legs. And from there, the omoplata, which I thought she could have finished that omoplata. That just looked, incredibly deep and tight. And I know, a modern MMA fighter, certainly at the UFC level, is not supposed to get tapped with an omoplata, but it occurred to me that it was possible for a second. But anyway, from there, Mackenzie turned the omoplata into an arm triangle very methodically, and then worked her over from the mount, back mount, whatever. And that was a very possible 10-8 round. This fight played out similarly to Miesha Tate versus Holm. Only in this case, there was no finish, and Holly Holm won a majority decision. But very similar fights, where Miesha Tate, I believe, in round 2 could have had a 10-8, and certainly round 5, if it ended, it was a borderline 10-8. So similar fights in the way they played out, and of course Holly had a lot of success in that fight. That's what people forget, but that was the story. Holly had a lot of success in rounds 1, 3, and 4, just like Jan did. Jan won rounds 1, 3, and 4, and she did so comfortably. She didn't win by a large margin like Dern did on the ground, but she was clearly the better striker. I thought she did start to slow down a little bit in the middle of the fight, but it wasn't a cardio issue. I think that was just apprehension, because Mackenzie Dern, showed she could get the fight to the ground without wrestling, or, in a bunch of different ways. Even losing the wrestling battle, like I said, she threw a weak head and arm throw and ended up mounting Jan a minute and a half later or whatever. But Jan, despite her cautious approach in the middle of the fight, she was still tagging Mackenzie. She had her rocked. I don't know about rocked, but she had her head snapped back a few times where Mackenzie had to regroup. Jan was putting up points. And I thought she fought a great fight. She didn't look the prettiest on the ground. She was clearly dominated, but she survived. I thought Mackenzie Dern would cut through Jan in 2 minutes on the ground. I think that's what I said. And she did cut through her guard positionally, but she wasn't able to put her away. When it came down to that finishing touch, putting her away, Jan just had this survivability from the back mount, from the full mount. She was surviving everywhere, and she faced a good amount of submissions as well. That armbar at the end, of course, was very tight. And speaking of the end, that last 15-second effort from Jan is what won her the fight, in my opinion, by saving it from a 10-8 round, saving her from a 10-8 round and saving her from a draw. And that's just a credit to her tenacity. She had 15 seconds. The round was over. I'd be like, all right, Mackenzie, there's 15 seconds left. You want to just go get some water? I'm fucking thirsty. And she pounced on Mackenzie and had a moment. She punched her in the face once and tried to punch her 10 times, whatever. It was a moment. It was enough to mitigate the 10-8. I think that's how the judges were thinking. And it gave her the fight. So Jan showed some great traits in this one. I think both fighters have clear deficiencies. Jan is not comfortable fighting on the ground. I do think, the next time she's finished, if she is ever finished again, it'll be on the ground. And Mackenzie Dern, she's got a lot of great traits as a fighter, even as a striker and a wrestler. She's relentless, but her wrestling and her striking need work. That's what's keeping her from being a great fighter. She's a very good fighter, but she's not a great fighter. And that's because she doesn't have the wrestling and striking, even though, again, she's got many great traits, durability being first and foremost. She just doesn't have the striking to score points with almost anybody. I know she dropped Amanda Bobby Cooper, but now she's fighting the top of the division, and she's undersized. She's shorter anyway. She's a little thicker, but she's, her striking's just never going to be her realm. It's never going to be where she puts up points. I think she'd be best served by pouring her entire training, all of her heart and mind, into wrestling, because that's what she needs. And look, overall, both fighters are still very much in the title picture. Of course, Jan didn't go anywhere, and Jan, especially if Carla Esparza loses, then maybe Jan could have a better angle, a better path to a title fight against Weili Zhang. And Mackenzie Dern, she's got 3 losses, all 3 by decision. This one may as well have been a draw. It's razor thin, not going to hurt her stock. But she's at least down 1 level now, getting back to a title. She's going to need 2 victories, let's say, or whatever, or just the right victory. But yeah, I thought we came into this fight with 2 title contenders, and we leave with 2 title contenders. So that's the cool thing about a razor-thin fight. Both fighters get over, so to speak, and that was the case here. Good 5-round fight. Really good effort from both girls. I thought Mackenzie Dern was the star of the show by coming out in round 5 like that. If she got the finish, you'd be seeing videos right now with the Rocky music and whatever, just like Leon Edwards' coach there, where Perillo was saying to her in the corner, look, you're down 3-1. You need a finish. You need to go after her. Just reckless abandon. Go after her. Get the fight to the ground. Whatever the fuck he said. Just imagine all that with Rocky music in the background. My point is, Mackenzie Dern did what I asked all fighters to do. Just go for it. Just show that you want it and you're aware of the scorecards instead of fighting your way to a decision loss. And Mackenzie went for it. She went for it. It paid off. She got a straight-up takedown. Another head and arm throw, but a straight-up takedown. And from there, just dominated Xiaonan. And I thought she was going to get a finish. In the end, Yan survived. And again, she cut that 10-8 down to a 10-9, I thought, in the end. Not on my card, but, that's what happened with the other judges, because that was looking like an ass-kicking round for Dern for a while there. But anyway, I did want to say, again, Mackenzie Dern's 5th round effort was greatly appreciated by me, and I thought, that's the reason that she can hold her head up high, especially here, because without that 5th round, it looks similar to the Marina Rodriguez loss. Very similar. But Mackenzie, again, she's never shown a lack of heart or will, and in my opinion, she, fought her way to a draw there. So, great fight. We'll see what happens next with these girls, but turned out to be a very pleasant 5-round main event. All right, next up, Randy Brown takes out Trinaldo. I don't know. I thought this fight was really close, to be honest. Really close. I looked up the media scores, and maybe I was just drunk, but I thought I'd see some people scoring it for Trinaldo, but by and large, they all scored it for Brown, that 2nd round and the 1st round as well. I like seeing Trinaldo hang in there. I just don't want to see that guy get finished, and he's one of those guys in his mid-40s now who's just, he's not really slowing down all that much. This is a loss, doesn't look great on his record, any loss or whatever, but Trinaldo was still in there, fighting tooth and nail with one of the best, I don't know if you'd call him up-and-coming fighters, but a guy that's right outside the rankings, or maybe now he'll be in the rankings for all I know. But Randy Brown is still climbing, and if his chin doesn't fail him, he's capable of beating a lot of great fighters. And Trinaldo here was a very game fighter, savvy veteran, fought tooth and nail. I thought he had some good work on the ground too. With some success anyway with Randy Brown. But generally speaking, Randy Brown was better from the outside. He did drop Trinaldo early, and then he insisted on keeping the fight standing. And, Randy Brown from here, it's him fighting a contender next. I believe that's what he called for in the post-fight interview too. Randy Brown is a guy I want to see tested by someone very dangerous. Not that Trinaldo isn't dangerous, but he's not as dangerous. Certainly not at welterweight as a lot of the, better welterweights. But Trinaldo, he's one of my favorite fighters on this card. He was and still is. And I'm glad he hung in there. I'll always be a Trinaldo guy. I'll always root for the guys in their 40s, even though I'm in my 30s, in case you thought I was whatever. But anyway, again, I thought it was a closer fight than other people did, but I did think, generally speaking, Randy Brown got the better of Trinaldo, and I'd hate to see a guy like Brown lose a bad decision, so I'll take it. Good fight. Randy Brown didn't exactly look dominant, but he clearly looked better than Trinaldo. I just thought Trinaldo made the fight close. He's a guy with durability, versatility, and a lot of tricks up his sleeve. So, not a bad co-main event at all. Not the most action fight, but a good win for a future contender. Next up, John Castaneda versus Daniel Santos. Was this the 3rd fight from the top? I guess it was. This fight went about the opposite of how I thought it was going to go. It really did. I thought Castaneda would have to weather a storm from Santos and then take over the fight later, because Castaneda's got that relentless pressure. And Instead, it went about the opposite. Castaneda rocked Santos early with a head kick, had him stumbling around, and poured it on him. I thought he was going to get a finish. He was knocking Santos around, but Santos survived. Santos, it's like I go back to when Weidman fought Anderson Silva. I remember saying to my brother, yeah, I'm assuming Anderson's going to win. Actually, I think I picked Weidman for that fight, but I said, yeah, on paper, Anderson should win, but this guy's undefeated. How do we know he doesn't have the greatest chin of all time, the greatest cardio of all time, whatever? There's a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to, undefeated fighters and guys you've only seen fight a handful of times. And that's where I put Daniel Santos. He's not undefeated. He was shut down by Julio Arce, and a lot of that was movement and basics, 1-2s and jabs and great movement. And Daniel Santos looked like an inexperienced, sloppy fighter. And even though he didn't exactly look like the most smooth fighter in this fight, seeing him get rocked, keep his composure, and then fight his way back in and take out Castaneda, who was starting to look a little fatigued after all that offense in round one, and he took him out with violent knees. It was awesome. Daniel Santos looked really good, just one of those relentless pressure, good everywhere, dangerous type of young fighters. And I got this one wrong. I mean, I did, my bet worked because the only bet I had for this one was the under 2.5 rounds plus 120, which turned into plus 140. And that was a pleasant surprise there. But Daniel Santos taking over this fight later, or in the middle of the fight, is not something I expected. I expected the exact opposite. Castaneda, him going forward and being one of those pressure fighters, I thought it would help. It might work against them early, and then it would work for him later when he breaks the more inexperienced fighter. And instead, we got to see the opposite of that, where it worked for him early, and it didn't work for him later. The inexperienced fighter turns out to have a hell of a chin on him and a good amount of tenacity, not to mention violence in his blood. So, big win for Daniel Santos. Tough loss for Castaneda, but very good fight. Very good fight. Glad that was on the main card, and it certainly fucking delivered. All right, next up, Hyony Barcelos versus Trevin Jones. This was the Hyony Barcelos show. I did think Hyony proved to be better than Jones everywhere. Everywhere. Jones did prove to be tough enough to hang with Barcelos. Jones, the majority of his losses are tight decisions. Not that this was a close fight, but he's a guy who hangs in there. And you can tell after a fighter's got 7-8 losses, he's a guy who hangs in there. And Barcelos was just too good, step ahead. I thought he was quicker. I don't even know about the power, but Barcelos hits hard. I know Jones has produced some knockouts, but Hyony Barcelos, I think, was just better than him everywhere. And it was a great win for him. He's a guy who really needed a rebound after those tough losses to Valiev and Henry, especially the Henry fight, because that was, Barcelos was a step behind in that one, despite being a gigantic favorite. And great victory for him. He had to work for it for 15 minutes. He looked good, worked hard, looked good everywhere. And Trevin Jones, it's a fight that maybe won't age well because Trevin Jones may not be long for the UFC. I don't know his contract situation. I'm assuming he'll get one more, but he may not. Even one of his victories, I think the win over Valiev is not a victory. It's a no contest or some shit. Don't quote me on that. I might be wrong. But Trevin Jones, if he sticks around the UFC, I still think fighting someone worse than Hyony Barcelos, he can hang around. I do think he's absolutely worthy of sticking around at the UFC, on the UFC level. But Barcelos is a very good fighter. I feel like overall that loss to Henry is the anomaly in his career. And other than that, he's just looked like a very good, well-rounded, consistent fighter, and this is what we saw from him in this fight: consistency. And man, he's back on the climb up. He's not as old as he looks. He's 33 years old, and he's clearly still a very sharp athlete. Like I said, coming into this fight, if he was knocked out once, I would have picked Jones against him here, just betting on trends and whatever, and knowing the type of fighter Jones is. A guy that can get his ass kicked for 7 minutes and then pop you with a left hook out of nowhere. And Barcelos was hitting this fight a few times too and whatever, but he's just, there's no fragility there. This guy's not on his way out, is my point. Where, you see a guy lose twice, just it doesn't look pretty on paper, and you start to wonder about him. But I'm not wondering about Hyony Barcelos. I want to see Victor Henry fight. I know that. And I'd even love to see Barcelos and Henry go at it again someday. But that's probably not going to happen. Move on. Barcelos, though, great victory. Looked good everywhere. Looked good for 15 minutes. And what more could you ask for, when he's fighting someone like Trevin Jones, who's tough to dominate. All right. So Deke Yusuf takes out Don Sheinus. This was very quick. Sadiq Yusuf clinched up, landed a few knees, and then guillotined Don Sheinus. I thought that was a very cool victory. Sadiq's first submission victory, even though, like I said, coming into the fights, he's got underrated jiu-jitsu. You could just watch his fight with Andre Fili, even though that was more of a positional victory. That's jiu-jitsu that won him that fight, though. That won him those rounds anyway, those positions. And Don Sheinus, thank you for stepping up, especially when you watch other fights fall apart. Jessica Penne versus Tabitha Ricci, and on the night of the fight, Philip Lins versus Maxim Grisham. That's where you got to really appreciate guys like Don Sheinus. I forget how long his fight, his announcement was, his notice was for this fight, but he stepped up on short notice, and he took on one of the most dangerous fighters on the card. The most dangerous on paper, looking at the odds. I'm pretty sure Sadiq was the biggest favorite. So, real big credit to Don Sheinus, but what happened is what should have happened. Sadiq Yusuf proved to be better everywhere. I'm really glad he got a submission victory, even though I predicted knockout, because, and I bet on knockout, but because Sadiq Yusuf is a guy who I thought had underrated jiu-jitsu, and it's just nice for, his submission skills to find him a victory in the UFC. It's something for the highlight reel, and a 30-second finish. So, good for Sadiq Yusuf. Not much to say about this fight. He's still fresh. Hopefully he fights again soon. And Don Sheinus, again, I may not consider him UFC level. This certainly didn't help his case, but stepping up on short notice and whatever, he's worthy of a return. So I'd like to see him get another opportunity. Maybe he can, I'm sure he can put on a better performance than that, but maybe he can get a victory at the lower end of the ladder there, the UFC ladder. All right, guys, next up, Mike Davis versus Barshov. I call him Borshchev, Slavakos, but it's Barshov. All right. This was the Mike Davis show. I did think he followed a similar path to victory that we saw from Mark Giacchese. Good wrestling from Mike Davis. Really good wrestling. And really bad wrestling from Barshov. Slavakos, I don't know if he's long for the UFC. I know he's got maybe better striking than everybody in his division. And I know he's got striking that can hang with everybody and knock out a lot of UFC fighters. But overall, I don't think he's long for the UFC. That wrestling just looks abysmal here. I don't know how many takedowns he's given up against Davis and Giacchese. And even though those guys are both wrestlers, they're not really, especially Davis is a wrestler, I think, first and foremost. These guys aren't wrestlers as fighters. They're strikers. That's the type of MMA fighters they've turned into. Even Mike Davis, he's a striker. And, these strikers are able to lean on their wrestling to take out Barshov. It's just not a good look. So, tough loss for Barshov. I don't know where he goes from here. Hopefully he sticks around because the upside is there. He proves to be a very exciting fighter when he wins. But when he loses, it only proves to be a boring fight because he's good at surviving. He doesn't stop fighting, doesn't stop anti-wrestling, doesn't stop trying to get to his feet, but it makes for a slow, shitty fight. Not that this was the slowest or the shittiest or whatever, but I imagine being a fan of Barshov and being very disappointed and very frustrated watching these last two fights. Mike Davis, He's a guy who needed that victory. And I think he said afterwards he was promising to fight 4 times if he gets like 100,000 subscribers on Instagram or some shit. Speaking of which, like, share, subscribe, all this shit. And then I'll fight 4 times next year. I'll fight Mike Davis if you subscribe. All right. But yeah, good win from Mike Davis. Want to see him fight more, certainly. 4 times in a year. It's a lot to ask, but that'd be fucking awesome. Of course, things have to go right without any athletic commissions suspending you and whatever for a knockout loss. But great return back to the octagon and a solid victory here. So, can't really ask for more when you're fighting a guy that's got the striking pedigree that Barcelos has. All right, next up. The fuck was next? Next up, I believe, was Brendan Allen versus Christoph Jocko. No way, that was not. I don't fucking know this shit. All right, Joaquim Silva versus Jesse Ronson. This was a good fight for whatever it was, a round and a half or whatever. I did think Joaquim Silva's power would be the difference, and it proved to be the difference. Sucks for Jesse Ronson. He's a guy who's had a rough go in the UFC, and he still doesn't get his first official victory here. Joaquim Silva is a guy who needed a victory coming off those 2 knockout losses, and he got it. He got it in incredible fashion. Hit a beautiful step-in knee from the southpaw position, which they were pointing out. The commentators were all over that. He was really making southpaw work for him very well, and he was. Jesse Ronson's a guy, he's a seasoned fighter, but I think that threw him off a little bit, kind of like Amanda Nunes versus Pena, too. And Jesse Ronson's a guy who said coming into the fight that his southpaw stance would lead him to a victory, because those are the two southpaws took out Joaquim Silva, Ricky Glenn and Nasrat Haqparast. But Jesse Ronson isn't the athlete either one of those guys is. He's not the striker, and defensively, I think he's lacking a little too. And Joaquim Silva didn't put him unconscious, but he dropped him with that beautiful knee and then pounded him out. I thought it was a great victory for Joaquim Silva. He's a guy who's had, really, he's thrived in wars, I want to say. Like I said, coming into the fight, he's had strong 3rd rounds against great fighters. Fucking Jared Gordon put him away. He even looked good against Vince Pichel and Reza Madadi, a fight he won. But Joaquim Silva, he's a guy who doesn't fight as often as he needs to. I think he's been in the UFC for 7 years and fought 7 times, maybe 8 for 8. I remember saying this shit in the pre-fight video, so I knew it like a week ago. But he doesn't fight as often as he could, and maybe he will now. This was a great victory, and look, you got to give fighters some space when they suffer knockout losses. Who knows what's going on with them? But now, this is a knockout victory. I'd like to see more from him before he enters his mid-30s or his late 30s. I think he's 33 years old. He's still, he might be in his prime right now, despite those 2 knockout losses. And Joaquim Silva, he does have that, he's got that power. He carries it late into the fight, which got him the victory over Jared Gordon. And this was a great victory for him. To get that victory in the 2nd round, it's about what I expected. I thought, I think I predicted 3rd round. I know I bet on 3rd round. But, yeah, he showed if his chin doesn't fail him, he's in there for the long run, and he's dangerous. He's always going to be dangerous for all 15 minutes. So, great win for Joaquim Silva. Rough loss for Jesse Ronson. Not sure where he goes from here, if he's still around or not. But, yeah, not a bad fight to have in the middle of the card. Next up, Maxim Grisham versus Philip Lins. This was an awesome fight. Fucking razor thin. I thought Grisham hit that triangle at the perfect... All right. Yeah, that sucked. I don't know who got injured or, failed their medical clearance, but somebody did. And the UFC was trying to help that fight along by pushing it to the main card when it was initially on the prelims. They shuffled things around, which is why my order was a little messed up here, in addition to me being unorganized. But, yeah, I don't know what happened. Hopefully we see them fight again soon, each other, if not someone else. And, again, I don't even know who had the issue, so whatever. All right. Olenic versus Latifi. This fight went about how I thought it would go. Latifi is a better wrestler, and he won this fight with positioning. I did think he looked good on the feet, or certainly looked better on the feet. I don't know if I'd say looked good, but he looked better on the feet. Was tagging Olenic, but the story of this fight is his wrestling and his neck. The fact that he wasn't able to be submitted. But this was the Ilir Latifi show. Largely dominant, not the most fast-paced fight, but Olenic is a guy who, despite being 45 years old, he's really tough to put away, and he's got good cardio. That's a guy that can fight for 15 minutes. I don't want to say he's shown no sign of slowing down, because I'm sure if I go watch his fights from 10 years ago, I'll see a difference in speed. But, he's a heavyweight now. He's a heavyweight, and he's fighting at an appropriate speed for heavyweight. It's just Ilir Latifi, who's clearly one of the smaller heavyweights, if not one of the bigger light heavyweights. Ilir Latifi was too fast for him, and just a bad matchup. Alir's never been submitted, and he's really tough to wrangle, to out-wrestle. Overall, I'm glad Olenic didn't get finished, and I'm glad my bet hit with Ilir Latifi, but make no mistake about it, I wanted to see Olenic win via submission. All right, moving on. Jessica Penne versus Tabitha Ricci. It's a shame what happened there. Moving on. Brendan Allen versus Christoph Jocko. This was very impressive. I thought Brendan Allen made a statement here. Christoph Jocko, what did he do? He caught a kick, I think, and then followed Allen to the ground, which, top position is almost always advantageous in MMA and almost always a smart move, but it proved out to be a dumb move and the beginning of his demise. Jocko's demise here. Brendan Allen hit a beautiful sweep, which again, I'm not some jiu-jitsu expert, but I know he held the lockdown and then hit the beautiful sweep. It looked beautiful, and from there, Jocko wasn't able to survive. Brendan Allen had him in that, whatever you call it, the gift wrap position, fucking like Dracula, and tied him up like Dracula like that, and that's where you saw the difference in what I predicted would be the difference maker, physicality. Brendan Allen was too physical for Christoph Jocko, and in such a dominant position like that, he was able to work some really nice magic and get that submission. Like I said, he had the fucking gift wrap, which should be called the Dracula, and he put Jocko on his belly. Once he got Jocko on his belly in that position, he let go, and Jocko had to do a push-up. He had all of his weight coming down, so that freed up his neck. And that's when Brendan Allen pounced on his neck and locked it up, and that's all she wrote. Awesome victory for Brendan Allen. I did predict him to win, but I thought it would be a tougher fight by decision. And, of course, I knew he could submit Jocko before Jocko could submit him. But I was expecting a longer fight where it would be largely held on the feet, and Allen would maybe bully Jocko with his physicality in the clinch. And also, Allen is a savage on the feet. It's just his chin might be a little shaky. I worry about it after those 2 second-round losses to Sean Strickland and Chris Curtis, which, of course, I did bet on Jocko via round 2 TKO. Not going to lie. But I also bet on Brendan Allen, so I'm happy Brendan Allen won. And plus, I like Brendan Allen better as a fighter. He's obviously a very more exciting fighter than Christoph Jocko. And Jocko, look, he's really tough to put away. Really tough to put away and to dominate like that. So this was a very rough night for him, especially because he had some, heat with Brendan Allen. Although Allen seemed to squash it in the end, somewhat graciously. He was like, look, no one's ever outclassed him. I'm not saying I outclassed him, but, he's a good guy, whatever. Like, you could tell maybe didn't mean to say that. But anyway, great win for Brendan Allen, tough loss for Christoph Jocko, and pleasant surprise to see that first round submission. Awesome sub. Next up was Chelsea Chandler versus Julia Stoliarenko. This was a very impressive win from Chelsea Chandler. I didn't see this fight going down like this exactly. I thought Chelsea Chandler would be able to slow Julia down with top position and win the wrestling battle, but I didn't think she'd win the wrestling battle like this. Julia Stoliarenko is an armbar threat, quick fighter. She's more accepting of the bottom position, like I said, but no one's accepting of mount. And that's where Chelsea Chandler found herself twice, I think. Julia Stoliarenko was going for a takedown, and Chandler just kind of put her hips in and jumped into full mount. And I think she did that twice. I know she did it at least once, because in the end, that's what got the finish. And Chelsea Chandler just looked to have really good hands. Really good hands standing and on the ground. Really good hands. And I've seen her fight plenty of fights before, but I didn't expect her to look this good here. It was a pleasant surprise, and especially on the ground. Her ground and pound was fucking awesome. It was awesome. She postured up and just landed great ground and pound. Big left hands right to the jaw. I was surprised Julia didn't go out cold, because she landed such clean, flush shots there. And even on the feet, she was tagging Julia from the beginning. From like the first moment, I said, oh shit, I didn't expect the hand differential to be this great. But Chelsea had much better hands, much better boxing. And for a bigger, stronger girl, she brings that pressure. You could say, and she doesn't have all that torque. She is a Diaz fighter. She trains out of Stockton with the Diaz brothers, Leslie Smith, whoever the fuck else. And it shows. She doesn't torque her punches or whatever. She throws like more arm punches or whatever, but it's all about speed and accuracy with her. And she's a big enough girl, 5'8", whatever, going on 145 pounds, where she wants to be naturally. She's got pop in her punches. So I really like her style. I like her hands, and that ground and pound was fucking awesome. Great victory for Chelsea Chandler. Really cool to see a UFC debutante, I gotta use that fucking word every video, look so good and get a first round ground and pound victory over a UFC veteran. Not the best record, Julia Stoliarenko, but still, nobody's gone through her like that. Nobody. So, awesome victory. Tough loss for Julia. I know I picked Chandler to win, but I did want Julia to win. I'm almost always rooting for whoever has more UFC experience, and this is a rough loss for her. Could be the end, but maybe not. She had that beautiful first round armbar, and Chelsea Chandler's a girl who, this fight was at catch weight of 140. Chelsea Chandler can make 135, apparently, but she's looking to fight at 145. My point is, if she lost to, if Chelsea Chandler challenges for the 145 belt, if that's still in fucking existence, if she challenges for that belt within the next year or whatever, this loss is going to look a lot better. So we'll see what happens with Julia. But yeah, rough loss, great win for Chelsea Chandler. And the first fight of the night, I called it. Guido Canetti. I told you. Don't ever forget that I told you Guido Canetti was going to win by getting a leg kick takedown into a no-hook rear naked choke. Because I called it. All right. Sorry about that one. Randy Costum, he's bigger, longer, more agile. He's about 35 years younger. And he had nothing for Guido Canetti. I mean, he wasn't able to get anything going. I did think he could have gotten things going and had a really strong first round especially. But Guido Canetti never gave him the chance. He was all over him. Such incredible pressure. Knocked him down, I think, twice with low kicks. I know, at least once, of course. But I think he knocked him down with those calf kicks early and then knocked him down again, a few seconds later and got the submission. Really wasn't much to write home about in this fight, but Guido Canetti looked great. Guido Canetti is a guy who's almost 43 years old, and he's coming off two first-round finishes in the UFC. So he is long for the UFC. He's already been in there a long time, even though he's only fought fucking 9 times now in 9 years or whatever. But great win for him. Looked really good. And, even if Randy Costa doesn't hang around the UFC, that's a great victory for a guy in his mid-40s, almost in his mid-40s. A guy in his 40s. So, awesome win for Guido Canetti. And great way to start off the fight card. All right, that about wraps it up. But let me just say, I'm really fucking disappointed that Jose Aldo's career was celebrated. It was celebrated between Joaquim Silva and Jesse Ronson and whoever the fuck else. It was like between the fifth and sixth fight of the night. They showed the Jose Aldo video. This goes back to my video I made about Jose Aldo a few weeks ago, where it's just his career should be celebrated. And I said, I don't want to see some video of him, whatever, and then between fights, and it comes and goes, and then we wait a year and a half to see him get inducted into the Hall of Fame, or however fucking long. And it looks like that's what we're going to see. This kind of made his career retirement official, but I didn't like this at all. I thought they should have done this for Jose Aldo when you have eyes on him. When you have eyes on you, the big pay-per-view event or whatever. No offense to Dern versus Jan, but this is not the most high-profile fight card. There's nobody in the fucking crowd. I hope Mark Zuckerberg was sitting there clapping with his fucking weird eyes. But really disappointed that Jose Aldo's career was celebrated like this. And again, as I said in the video talking about Jose Aldo, I'd like to see him fight once more. I look at his career and I say, look, this guy lately, in the last year or whatever, he's beaten Pedro Munoz and Marlon Vera and whatever. He didn't look good against Merab Dvalishvili, but he didn't look like he was, broken down or anything. That was just a guy who's a relentless wrestler and a horrible matchup for Jose Aldo. Not even historically, it might even be a favorable matchup, but at this point with his pressure and speed and relentlessness, he's the only guy that was going to make Jose Aldo look bad like that. And I think Jose Aldo should go out on a fight. But whatever, there's always a video, nice, whatever, 30-second package that you can air between Jesse Ronson, Joaquim Silva, and Randy Costa, Guido Canetti. So, whatever. All right, I'm done bitching. Thank you for the, views here. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that wonderful horse shit. And I will talk to you guys soon.